Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Dr. John Weil from Middle Tennessee State University, political science professor in the Honor College there. Dr. Weil, we were talking about the testimony by Michael Cohen this week. You and I both have a little snow in our hair.
Yes,
did you get some deja vu feeling that perhaps you were back in 1974 and John Dean was testifying before the Watergate Committee?
I spent practically an entire summer watching it, and those were the days, as you and I discussed earlier, where there were 3 networks and they were basically on any network. If you're going to watch TV that day, that's what was on, and there were a lot of memories brought back. Yes.
Chuck Todd of NBC was quoted during the hearings this week of saying that this was the first unofficial hearing of the Donald Trump impeachment. Did you see it that way as well?
I'm not sure. I mean, it could be. Part will depend. We'll know a lot more probably next week or whenever. Certainly by mid-March, we're supposed to get the Muller report. If there's something there as well as what we had with the hearing, I think it's likely. But, this was sort of a Republican talking point that the whole purpose of the hearing was not to get to the truth. It was to impeach Donald Trump. And I think there is hesitation on the part of some Democrats that politically impeachment does sometimes backfire.
So what do the Democrats do? Do they wait for the Mueller report to come out, and what's the Mueller report going to look like? Because nobody's quite sure what the public's going to see, or even what Congress is going to see when the Mueller report comes out.
I don't know. I mean, I think what happened with the last, and I know Mueller is not the same. He's not called a special prosecutor. What happened, I think, in the last special prosecutor case was we got too much. A lot of information on Clinton's sexual life that frankly probably wasn't that relevant to what was being invested, certainly wasn't relevant to Whitewater. And my fear is that we're going to now overreact on the other side, and after 2 or 3 years of spending taxpayer dollars and sort of waiting for this, the man behind the curtain, that we find there's nothing there.
And it may well be the biggest problem that Donald Trump has is not coming from Robert Mueller. It may come from what the Southern District in New York, and they don't have this special mandate to look strictly at Russia. They can look at anything involving his public life or his financial life, and so
that's right.
That means this could live on well beyond the Mueller investigation is over and done with.
It does, and it's, one would sort of hope for some kind of closure before we got too much more deeply into the next election campaign, but we're, every day there's a new. I noticed there was a new candidate.
Well, and Democrats, what are the presidential candidates going to do? I mean, they sort of give a whole new life to this, a whole new half-life to it out on the campaign trail. They could go lots of different directions about this, and that puts the Democrats in a box between perhaps even their own people and the Democrats and the rest of the country about what to do.
Again, the legal dimension and the political dimension, aren't always together. And
the Democrats want to try to have some things to talk to the public about that they've gotten done now that they control the House. If they don't make deals with the president and the Republicans in the Senate, they can't get anything done. And if they put impeachment on the front burner, all deals are going to be off.
Well, I mean, I'm not expecting a lot of deals in any case.
So do the Democrats subpoena Mueller to come in if they don't like what's being released, or if nothing's been released, just to find out and let him testify that way? Do they have those kind of powers to bring him in to tell everything he knows?
I think they do, but I'm not absolutely sure.
There's also this situation where the Justice Department has ruled that, or at least a policy, they don't indict or don't put on trial a sitting president. So we have a situation where this report comes out. Some people think it's something he ought to be prosecuted about. So he runs for re-election and gets elected so he doesn't get prosecuted. And if he does lose the election, then he does. What a bizarre situation that'll be for the 2020 election.
And, it was sort of highlighted, even as we're speaking, apparently the Attorney General in Israel is contemplating indicting the Prime Minister. From my own perspective, it's not altogether clear that you cannot. I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution that prevents indicting a sitting president. As a prudential matter, it would be very difficult to do your presidential duties if you were being prosecuted at the same time, but I'm not sure how much different it is from that and having people watch televised hearings.
In a story that probably would be the #1 story going this week in Washington if it was not for the Cohen testimony, the U.S. House approved a resolution that would cancel President Trump's national emergency proclamation to build the southern border walls. Still has to be passed by the Senate, probably be vetoed by President Trump.
And it would be his first veto.
But that would be quite embarrassing for him. Will the Senate pass it at this point?
I hope so. And I say that as, you know, someone who has basically spent his life studying the U.S. Constitution. If they don't, everything that I have said about Congress has the power of the purse, the president has the power of the sword, and the courts have the power of judgment is out the window, because we would now have a president with the power of the purse. And what's fascinating is the number of people who say, well, we're not going to vote against the president on this because we favor the wall, but we don't want any other presidents to do it.
And Lamar Alexander has gotten into the middle of this because he seems to be offering a third way to do this, but it also sounds like the third way may also be a little bit of a message to the president of do something to get rid of that declaration, or we may vote with the Democrats to nullify.
Right. I mean, I think there was some thought initially that when the president pursued this policy, he may have done so actually thinking possibly it'll get shot down in the courts, and if it does, he can still say, I've done everything that I know to do. You know, it's the Democrats' fault.
Dr. John Vile of MTSU is our guest. He's a political science professor in the Honor College there. Back to continue our conversation after you watch these messages.